Let's first give you a definition of what a quilombo is. A quilombo is a maroon settlement of slaves who absconded, went into the mountains to establish their own communities. The Quilombo community, they are very serious about resisting the elimination of their culture. They're very serious about holding on to their land. So they've been fighting this since the 17th century. So you can see that they were not accepting their enslavement. They were not even beginning to accept it. They fought and they resisted. And that's what we have to do today.
The Lees were not born elites. How could we have been? We were the progeny of slaves. Our origins are humble. But as we have gone forward with uncanny vision, we have acquired many things through hard work, entrepreneurship, high educational attainment, wealth, values, and diligence. My ancestors would have achieved little if they had not dreamed of a life of freedom and fought to make that dream, that aspiration, a reality. Not knowing what the ultimate cost of the battle would be to realize for their progeny a better life.
These are the old stomping grounds, so to speak.
In a very real way, Harris people relate to this man, Norman W. Harris. Norman Harris recognized the opportunity to bring the wealth of the industrialized East to these emerging communities. In 1882, at the age of 35, he founded the firm of N.W. Harris and Company. Norman Harris had a unique idea. He insisted that his employees get all the facts before purchasing any bonds. This meant calling in lawyers, engineers, and other experts. Above all, Norman Harris operated his firm in strict accord with the principle he termed honesty and fair dealing. So in 1911, the organization moved to its own building at 111 West Monroe Street.
Still a beautiful structure. I think that's it right on the corner there. So yes, this is where it all started for me. Here at the Harris Bank. I did a lot of trust work for a lot of prominent individuals here in Chicago from the black community. Most people think that the money is on the first floor where the banking, the demand accounts are kept and worked through the checking and savings account. But the real money is upstairs, where the where the trust, the corporate trust, individual trusts are managed and dealt with. So I was up there, and of course, back at that time, I was the first black lawyer, African American, to integrate that trust department.
Wow.
Yeah, I was the first one.
The first one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it was. Quite an experience, yeah. Yeah. Now there used to be a law firm up there called Chapman and Cutler years ago. I don't know if they're still there. They're probably gone. And it's a beautiful, and only certain levels of employees were allowed to have access to the executive dining room.
Yeah.
But that's where you did your selling to get the trust new business. So that's what it was all about. And that's where it's, and this is where I started my professional career, right here. They recruited a number of young black college graduates during that time because the banking industry was changing and they were bringing in, black students and so forth. And of course, not too many of them lasted very long, but.
And why was that?
Well, it's the culture, man. It's the culture, yeah. Banking is very, very conservative, and you have to comport yourself in a certain way. There's a certain kind of well, culture is the best way I can say that you have to kind of adapt. And so,
kind of like the man in the great flannel suit.
yeah, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, it requires a certain, I would say probably a certain style to really make it. And then of course, you know, you have to be good at what you're doing.
Exactly.
And so I brought in over $9 million of trust new business while I was here. I feel like a retired lawyer who's going back over this history and how it shaped my entire professional life. But it was a great experience. I wouldn't have traded it. My father did not want me to come here. He wanted me to stay in Virginia, but I said, no, Dad, I'm gonna go because I need to get away from, you know, Charlottesville and all of that. I need to go and kind of see what the world was like. And so I took the plunge. I was green as an apple, you know, coming into the big city, dealing with the big lawyers and the big business and all that sort of thing. It was a rite of passage. In fact, I often say that I was run out of Chicago on a rail. Everything kind of failed to a certain extent. It started out great, but in the end, Chicago won. Standards and integrating a trust department and everybody wanting to know, well, what do black people want? You know, I was asked that question by my colleagues and I told them, I said, well, black people want the same thing that you want. We just want to be with our families. We want to, you know, have economic success. We want, you know, to be treated as worthy individuals. What's so unique about that? The Chicago experience was a learning experience and very developmental for me. But it didn't work out. It didn't work out. I left the Harris Bank. I was associate director of a minority business consulting group. And so I just decided to, you know, take my shot somewhere else rather than here in Illinois. So I moved to Washington, D.C. actually, and I bought a building, small apartment building there with the help of my father there in Washington, D.C., north of Howard University. Stayed there, started teaching at Morgan State University for a while. And after that, I took the bar exam for Pennsylvania, passed, and went to Philly. I had some relatives who lived in Philadelphia. And it was the East Coast. I'm an East Coast person. So I thought that would be good. Chicago and Philadelphia have a lot of similarities, and being close to DC. So I decided to take my shot in Philadelphia. I had relatives there, so I went on up 95 and started practicing law in Philadelphia. So I had this small office here, and I had to figure out, well, how am I going to get some business here? I got rent to pay. I went through the yellow pages, made a list of all of the life insurance, and I sent out about 100 or 150 letters to all the life underwriters, and I got 1 or 2 replies. But the one reply that I got turned out to be the most critical, and that was a reply from an agent by the name of Lang Dixon. And he answered my letter. We had a relationship that must have lasted the whole time until he died. But it all started right here in the Robinson building, right there, right there.
A man truly becomes a man when he realizes in this competitive world that his fate is in his own hands.
Okay. Okay. All right, honey bunny, we're back at it. Really, it doesn't look too bad. Of course, the yard looks terrible, but the dogwood is still there.
They took away those bushes that were right there.
Yeah, they took all those bushes away. Yep. Yeah, this is the place. Yeah. When Michelle and I first got married, we lived on the first floor, and I had an office on the second floor. That's how we started. And then as time developed, I went to work with New York Life and all of that, and we renovated the apartment that we lived in and turned it into my office. And we actually took an apartment upstairs on the second floor for a little while. And then we ended up living on the third floor up there. Stayed on the third floor until we basically sold the building. So we lived all over this entire place. This is 6412 Germantown Avenue. And that started it for me right here. And I moved in here from Washington, D.C. This is where I practiced. I made my living. I made a very good living here. Yeah, well, it ain't mine no more, that's for sure.
It's a beautiful building.
Yes, beautiful building. I learned the law in Illinois, in Chicago. I practiced law here in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, and I retired from the law in Virginia, in Charlottesville. So that's the sequence of events for me. Nostalgia is a strange feeling. I mean, I look upon all of this with a great deal of pride and a great deal of satisfaction, because this is what made me. I mean, this is what it was all about for me. I mean, this was my emancipation. So, as I always say to myself, I'll always be indebted to Philadelphia, always indebted to the state of Pennsylvania, because they gave me my life. So, lessons learned: be consistent, honesty and fair dealing, and develop relationships, because it's all about relationships. Everything is relationship. That's a long story. Well, we are going to go into City Hall, and I'll take you by the courtroom where I had the attack. It was in courtroom 195. Well, it started that morning on Cedric Street. I got up and took Justin up to the corner to get the bus to school, and I felt this real pain in my chest. I felt like, I don't know, it was just a painful thing. I didn't know what it was or anything like that, but it was a dramatic pain in my chest. And I went back home, and I had a DUI case that day, and I just, like I usually do, I just pushed on and went on down there and to the court, and I was, at counsel table, and yeah. So I went on to court, and I was doing the case, and I'd had another terrible pain in my chest. I had a DUI case in this courtroom, 195. So I went ahead and tried the case, but during the time the case was going on, I felt this really bad pain in my chest. And I came out, and there was a phone booth right here, and I went in there to call. I don't know if I was calling Michelle or I was calling whoever, and I just collapsed right in here.
At the time, I was working at a regional health planning agency, and every month we had a meeting in Trenton, and someone interrupted me and said I had a call. Otis had suffered a heart attack, and so I immediately dropped everything. I made my quick excuses to go and left immediately. So many awful things went through my mind in terms of Otis's status. It just a flurry of messages going through my head. When I entered the hospital and they told me where he was on a gurney out in the hallway, and he was still suffering through the attack. He was in pain. And I was looking down at him, and he was telling me, he said, I'm in pain, I'm still having the attack. it was just a moment in time where my whole life just stood still. I was just at a pause because Otis was my life. And I didn't know what was happening to him or what would happen to him. So it's one of those days you don't forget.
So that was 30 years ago. And of course, I still have the effects of that heart attack today. It changed my life completely. When I came to Philadelphia to start practicing law, and I remember coming down Market Street and seeing this tremendous edifice, this tremendous building, I was intimidated. And, it was like David trying to take on Goliath. It was just a monster to do that. And Philadelphia is a very sophisticated lawyer's town. I mean, this is no plaything here. I remember when I first started, the judges had to interview you before they would put you on the court appointments list to see whether or not you were capable enough of handling, basic rudimentary criminal trials. So I had interviews with several of the judges, and from there, I built my law practice. I imagine you could say that it was very much akin to a honeybee building a honeycomb from which I extracted a lot of honey. This is where it all evolved for a very long time. Now we're going to go down a ways across. At one time, all the criminal court cases were held here. About 20 years ago or so, they built a new criminal court building. And so they have moved most of the criminal cases, as far as I know, into that new criminal court building. But this was the center of everything. Your civil trials, criminal trials, everything was right here in City Hall. So this is where I applied my trade the entire time I practiced law here in Philly. Well, being back in City Hall is a real experience in nostalgia, to go back and see all of this ornate courtrooms and buildings, and so much took place here. I had so many experiences. This is where I learned to practice law, in these courtrooms before these judges. And the Philadelphia judges were very intimidating, and without a mentor, you had to just learn by doing. And that's very stressful, but that was my path. As I said, this place was kind of a business home, because what is known as the prothonotary, which is a big word for the clerk of the court's office, was here in Philadelphia, was here in this building. We had to prepare court papers, and I would bring them down, and we'd file them here and get the docket stamp on them and all that sort of thing. So this is where all of it took place. Philadelphia was a place where, as we all know, many of the enslaved people tried to get to Pennsylvania, tried to get across the Mason-Dixon line into Pennsylvania, where freedom was. And to a very large extent, Pennsylvania gave me my freedom. This is where I was admitted to the bar, and as fate would have it, a very good bar. A bar with centuries of tradition. And as I said, Philadelphia is a lawyer's town. I enjoy practicing law here. It's a great place to do that. And so Philadelphia gave me my freedom. And just like George Washington crossed the Delaware River, I crossed into Philadelphia on 95 North some 40-some years ago, and found my Philadelphia freedom here.
Coming to know Otis was not an easy path. We met at a party that my girlfriend and I gave at her home in Philadelphia. And she had mentioned there was someone from her hometown that was relocated and was in the Philadelphia area, and whether she could invite him. And I said, sure, of course. Being a co-host, I was helping with the party and etc. And at the end, he asked for my phone number. And I didn't give him my home phone number. I gave him my work phone number. At the time, I was working in New Jersey. And I said, well, if he really is interested, he'll call me. He'll make that long distance call to New Jersey. And I was working one day and the phone rang. It was him on the phone. I was really surprised. I just slowly fell in love with him. And he asked me to marry him. And this was back in the fall of 1979. And we were married in the following August of 1980. Boy, he really had his hands full coming into new territory. And to build a practice was very, very hard. He had to get his name out, but he worked very, very hard. We just had a real busy schedule. At the time, I always worked in New Jersey, so I commuted every day from our home in Philadelphia to southern New Jersey. And then Otis came to join us to live with us as a teenager. And then a couple of years later, we had Justin. So the house was full, the house was busy. It was a lot to do as individual professionals in our own industry, as well as being parents. But we built and we had a very happy home. And from that happy home, we established a lot of good memories for our kids. Even today, when they think about childhood experiences and the things that we did, the places we went to, they remember those things with a lot of joy. And for us, we felt that we did our job as parents by leaving them with joyful memories.
Michelle, with the help of my sons, gave me a 75th birthday celebration, which was absolutely fantastic. Surprise, yeah, it was supposed to be a surprise. It was a surprise all the way to the last kind of the day before. Yeah, right. And so she asked me to say a few words, you know, during the party.
Oh, look at it, yeah. Where are you? I want to get some of these here. I always like those with raisins in them. Yeah. Hey, yeah. Let me get these three. 3 of those. Yeah, right.
And the one thing I said, and I hadn't prepared remarks, I said that, you know, in my life, what matters most are relationships. Because it is relationships. These are the relationships that you have allow you to do things. Like a successful relay team, the values of a family must be handed off, relayed from one generation to the next, and successfully employed, not dropped. This was and is the way my immediate family chose to run the race of life. Philly is the city of brotherly love, but it really is the city, if you know Philadelphia, the city of the jugular vein, okay? Philadelphia is tough. It's a labor town, very, very political. Has a real blue collar kind of culture to it. And also you have the top layer of a lot of professionals in Philly, high-end professionals. And you know, Philadelphia gets a lot of its culture from the big brother to the north, New York City. So Philadelphia is between the north, New York City, and to the south, Washington, D.C., and then right up from Washington, Baltimore. So Philadelphia kind of gets the currents from all of these north and south boundaries. So there's a lot of sophistication in Philadelphia. I talk about the Philadelphia Story, which was a movie. I think Paul Newman was in it, and he played the role of an attorney. And the last line of that movie is, I'm paraphrasing, I'm actually paraphrasing myself because I don't remember exactly. He said, when he finished up this case, he said, "I'm not as good as I could have been, but I'm not as bad as I thought I was." And that epitomizes me exactly. So, hooray for Philadelphia. On an autumn night in the fall of 1964, I experienced an exalted moment of both execution and interpretation. The event was staged in the auditorium at Burley. This large room with theater seating had reasonably good acoustics. A large black Steinway grand piano set in the center of the stage. I announced my selection, sat down, and began to play. I was removed psychologically from my surroundings for the moment. I played it flawlessly for the first time in public. The suppleness of my body and the freedom of my spirit allowed me to sway and move with the requirements of the music. It just happened so unexpectedly, and I won first place. Burley was a black high school in a city that was very segregated during the pre-civil rights era. And I don't know how much you know about American history as it relates to race relations, but there are a few key decisions that established the law in the United States that related to the treatment of people of color, Americans of African descent. One, of course, was the Dred Scott decision. Dred Scott basically held, without getting into the specifics, that regardless of your status, of a black man's status, he still was a slave. And, you know, there were really no rights that a white man had to respect of black people. So Dred Scott was kind of set a bad tone for a very, very long time. And then the next progression was Plessy versus Ferguson. Plessy versus Ferguson, I think it was an 1898 decision that set the standard for separate but, quote, separate but equal, but in reality it was separate but unequal. So that set the stage for all of the schools to retain their segregation. They had what was known as de facto segregation anyway. At that point it became de jure segregation, which means segregation by law. And I came up under that era. Most black folks in America my age came up under Plessy versus Ferguson, were educated under Plessy versus Ferguson, the separate but equal doctrine of racial segregation. And so the South was a leader in enforcing, you know, those standards. So we had segregated schools. I went to all segregated schools. I didn't have a white teacher until I went to Howard University. Well, let me strike that. I had one white teacher in a summer program that they allowed to accept black students in down at what was known as Lane High School at that time, which was the all-white high school. But other than that, that was it. So from Richmond to Charlottesville was all black education. And that's fine, except that the schools were not competitive schools. They were not
designed systemically to provide blacks with a competitive education. Though the system, kind of like Brazil, talked about being a racial democracy in the sense of, well, you can go to school and so forth and so on, and then you get out and compete in the mainstream. The authors of these decisions, the enforcers of this segregation policy, knew that the education they were affording blacks was substandard, that it was not a competitive education, and it kept them from competing in the mainstream. And so that caused a lot of black folks to be detoured from professions and things like that they might have wanted to do. And it caused me a fair amount of chagrin, one would say, but you had to fight to overcome that lack of competitiveness in your education. So Burley High School was the segregated high school when we moved here in 1960. I went to what is known as Jefferson Elementary School now, which is over in one of the black area of Charlottesville. At one point, Jefferson was the only black high school in Charlottesville for the black students. And then, you know, the county and city, because they collaborated on Burley. Burley got city black students and county black students. They all went to one black high school. And they may have done the same thing for the whites at Lane High School, but I'm not sure about that. But in any event, after I finished Jefferson 1 year or so, then, you know, was off to high school, and so I went to Burley. And Burley was a very warm environment, and it was very nice, but the education was not a competitive education. And it was systemically designed to be that way. I never got the benefits of Brown versus the Board of Education in terms of my elementary or secondary school education. And so, as I say, Burley, it was a big contradiction. A nice school, loving teachers, black educators who were doing the very best they could, dignity and respect, and I love those teachers. But, you know, it is what it is. I mean, they can't overcome the system. So, yeah, I have great memories. All right, this is a picture of the debate club, and I won Best Speaker and got a scholarship, and that's me there and John Ragland, who was my partner. We were the best negative team in the state in 1965, and I was awarded Best Speaker in the state in '65. Otis Lee, number 1, and Ragland, number 2. I think that's basically it. I'm only in here a couple. Oh yeah, they give you my graduation picture. It's probably worthwhile having. Okay, so this is my graduation picture. Over to the right here. And some of my classmates. All right, so that's the Burley yearbook. This home was built by my mother and father in the early 1970s. I was a student at Howard University. In fact, I was in my first year in law school when they built this home. They were one of the first families to move out into this area, which is kind of commonly known as the Farmington area of Charlottesville. You know, my dad always had a great eye for value and real estate and those types of things. And the street we were living on before they decided to build this home was getting to be very, very busy. It was known as Ridge Street. And back in the 60s, Ridge Street was a black middle-class corridor, and it didn't have as much traffic. But as Charlottesville began to grow more and more, the traffic got worse. And so they decided to go ahead and move out of the city and to build their dream home.
This was Dad's flagship, his little Monticello, one would say. And they built the home and moved out here. I think it was around 1972, somewhere between 1971 and 72. And this area, this development out here was just beginning to be opened. And it was such a valuable area because it's so close to the city of Charlottesville, so close to the University of Virginia, but yet it's in Albemarle County. And it's along what used to be known as the Gold Coast in Charlottesville, along 250 West. So they built the home. They were the only blacks. Again, as I said before, we take no pride in being the only. It just shows you how far we have to go and how far we've come. But they endured that. They were a little afraid of the race issue. And so initially, when they built the home, they put locks on all the windows because they were unsure. And I think my father actually had a weapon as well. But they were among quality people, and race was not an issue. Everybody kept to themselves, and we just lived here. You know, Mom and Dad prospered here. My mother really loved this home. And all of my family members have lived and died here. My father died in his bedroom in this house. My mother passed away in this house in her bedroom. And it is my intention to have my final days in this home as well. So I am just a custodian. I'm just a trustee. I will hold this property until I die, and my hope is to hand it over to my children and my grandchildren. And I'm hopeful that they will have the values to appreciate what their ancestors did. That is the sign of being able to be a conservative economically and to be able to transfer wealth to the next generation. So that was the old Paramount Theater there. Yes, right there. It was a segregated theater. We couldn't go in there except sit upstairs. It was that way for quite a while. This was a jewelry store on the corner there. I used to work at another jewelry store that was right along here. And of course, they've changed all of this now since then. Back here used to be Vinegar Hill. And Vinegar Hill used to be the black commercial area for Charlottesville. And they raised all of Vinegar Hill and put the federal courthouse and all of that in there. I saw my first James Bond movie in that theater. Yeah. We had to sit upstairs, we couldn't sit downstairs. And saw Gone with the Wind there.
Oh, wow.
All of that. You know, it was called the Jefferson Theater. I think it's still the Jefferson's Theater. And of course, this is the Paramount, which was very popular. And same conditions were there. I think we actually had to enter through the back of the theater, which is over on, I think it's, no, that's not Water Street, Market Street over there. But, you know, things have changed. But that's the way it was in the 60s, during my time living in Charlottesville. Okay, so there's a plaque which commemorates where slaves were sold right in this area here. And I think it's over here.
This is the Charlottesville District Court and the Police Department headquarters here in Charlottesville. I practiced a ton of law in that Charlottesville District Court. I almost used to live in there. Because I could walk from my office up here to Court Square and to the Charlottesville District Court. And of course, this is right back of the downtown mall. Yes, so this is the office I toiled in for years here in Virginia. We bought this building decades ago, remodeled it. Okay, this is the back door. Put my office in. And this is where I worked, did my thing. And I commuted to Philly. Well, I didn't call it a commute, but a rotation, because I still had my office in Philly for a while. And this is where I did my thing here in Virginia. And we still kind of keep it, but I'm not practicing law here. Now, the picture on the lower left was when I was sworn into the Pennsylvania bar back in 1977. Here's a picture of Oliver Hill and myself. He was congratulating me after being sworn in, and at his office there in Richmond. And this is a picture of my mother. She's dressed fit to kill in all mink and mink hat and all that. And this is my dad when he got an honorary doctorate degree from a college there in Lynchburg, Virginia Seminary and College. The oldest black college in the United States, I think. So he got his honorary doctorate there.
Otis is from South Boston, Virginia. He's from Richmond and Charlottesville. He's from Washington, D.C., Chicago, and Philadelphia. He's from Southport, North Carolina. His people came from Africa, but his mind and his heart in recent years of his life and in the years that remain are with the Quilombos of Brazil.
Put them on a slave ship, what we call the Middle Passage. They went to these countries and they were just enslaved, just as though they were common people. Well, they were not common. Some of them were royalty, but they were used to running their own countries, used to running their own lives and all that sort of thing. So they rebelled and they went into the mountains and established their communities. We call them maroon communities or maroon societies. And in Brazil, today, there are over 6,000 of these societies. The descendants of these Africans number somewhere who live in Quilombos is somewhere near 16 million. And they have a claim to over a third of the land in Brazil because their ancestors settled it and they stayed there, and so now they have a claim to that land. Zumbi was the leader of a Quilombo known as Quilombo dos Palmares. It was a Quilombo community, and Quilombos are a hidden refuge, a place where slaves could find freedom and where they went for protection. Quilombo. And so Quilombo, meaning hideout, meaning place of refuge, protection. They trafficked over 4.5 million Africans from West Africa and Central Africa and took them to the Americas. The Africans who went to Brazil refused to accept their enslavement. So they went into the mountains and established what we call Afrocentric communities. They lasted for over 100 years. And during that time, they were attacked over 120 some times. But they defeated the Dutch, they defeated the Portuguese, and they set themselves up to be owners of a substantial amount of land in Brazil. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore, then run?
Otis is hardworking.
I've always been a goal-oriented person. I always have projects, and my wife will tell you that. I always got another project.
Otis is honest.
You know, if I were going to describe my father, I'd say he's a warrior. He's from a family of overachievers.
Otis will help anyone who's in need as long as he knows that they're not taking advantage of him.
Certainly a man of compassion, and he's always been there for his people.
But I'm very goal-driven. I always have goals. My goal was to write 3 books, and I wanted to write substantive books. I wanted to write literature, not just put a manuscript between 2 covers.
Otis is 100% of his profession. He is a lawyer. He was meant to be a lawyer. He loves an argument, and as lawyers goes, they always want to feel that they have won the argument. So living with him has been a lot of exciting times as well as challenging times.
He's very passionate about the subjects that he interested in. Obviously, dealing with Quilombo's story. Look, I think he's a great advocate for the Quilombolas in Brazil. I mean, he's bringing attention to an issue that frankly I didn't know about.
The Quilombos offer the issues that are very important to me: remedying injustice, fighting for land, trying to overcome the stereotype that they are under or have been in Brazil because of their location as being in the lowest caste of the Brazilian racial hierarchy.
My dad has also always been an advocate for people of color in Philadelphia in particular. I remember when, as a lawyer there, he would take on cases for people and they would come to him because they know the body of work that he had done and that he has a history of trying to be there for people that are in need.
Now, having said that, my goals to a very large extent have been met, except having that keystone goal that kind of puts a capstone on my career as a writer and as an advocate. And that is encapsulated in the story of the Quilombos.
And he's bringing a lot of great attention to something that's obviously very passionate to him, and obviously there are a lot of people in Brazil also who are talking about these things. They're real people. They have a real story to tell, I think it's interesting. I think it's great for people to know about it and take from it what they think is important. And it's like another piece of history that you don't know about. So it's great, fantastic. He's taken this huge effort on to bring this story to life.
So it is my fervent hope to be able to educate people about the importance of what the Quilombolas are doing, the importance of their story, because that story resonates with anybody who is interested in truth and in justice and in economic independence and people who are trying to just hold on to what they have.
So what he's doing is basically pulling off the veil of what really took place, particularly in Brazil, but also in how that struggle parallels the struggle in North America as well.
I'm passionate about undoing injustice. I abhor injustice.
These people were stripped of everything and were able to form a community and to form an existence in spite of that. And that's championing of sorts, I believe.
There's a rule in the law of equity. One of the rules says that equity abhors a forfeiture. What does that mean? It means we don't want to see somebody lose what they're entitled to. We want justice. We want equity. We want people to get a fair shake.
Because they have been struggling for such a long time, but they don't give up.
We want them to get what they're entitled to. This is what this is all about. So we've got to try to move ahead. We don't have time to waste. Time is of the essence in this thing. You never know how many years you're going to have.
I've spent, I think, 10 years, putting this project together. So, it's something that he's really dedicated himself to.
So, no time to waste. Time is of the essence.
You're trying to lay the groundwork for the next generation to go beyond.
That's why this issue has captivated me. I want them to get what they're entitled to.
Okay. This is an old favorite of mine from many years. My music teacher brought this piece to me. It's by Gustav Klimt. It's called Indian Sunset, and I've been playing this for years. It's a lovely piece. I like it so very much.
Trust and love are mutually exclusive. You can have one without the other. Trust and reliance, however, are closely related. Can you trust someone without relying on them? But in matters of the heart, trust and love are inclusive of one another. The only people I ever trusted were my mother and father and Michelle. And as my sons mature, I trust them more each day.